I'm Kyle Johnson, and I have been fascinated with this sentence from the NCSBN's seminal national simulation study. The student was often in an active nurse role only once a day for 15 to 30 minutes. The rest of the time, the student was an active observer. Have you ever run a sim where some of the students were players and others were observers? Do you ever wonder what students in observer roles in simulation or in traditional clinical are learning? And do you try to make sure that every student is in some nursing role during the simulation? You know, the primary nurse, secondary nurse, med nurse, treatment nurse, even though you know that is really not how nursing practice works today, or at least not any nursing practice I ever had. Well, fear not, because I am going to show you why, when good pedagogical practices and the NACSL standards of best practice for simulation are used, learners in both roles can be considered to be actively engaged in the simulation learning. So, even though a learner in the participant role makes decisions and provides patient care in the scenario, and a learner in the observer role is watching the scenario unfold either from the simulation environment or more than likely from an audio-visual room such as this, I have data to explain the complex and theoretical processes that are occurring which inform learning in both roles. But what about those kinesthetic learners who say that they prefer to be hands-on? Well, there might be preferred learning styles. However, in a recent review of experimental and correlational studies, the conclusion was this: we should put the idea of learning styles to rest until there is convincing evidence. That's right. The evidence to date is weak, so we need a new frame to hang our understanding onto, because, in fact, we learn well through our vision even when we don't prefer visual learning. We are all visual learners, and we are primed to learn socially, observationally, and visually from the time we are born. And what's really interesting is there is data that says that the students sitting in our classroom learn better this way, and the science behind that is really exciting. Did you know that there's an evidence and brain-based way to observationally learn? It involves the mirror neuron system and the action observation network. It's the literature from exercise science, Olympic training, coaching, and it's moving into medicine. And it's clear, if you want to learn observationally, observe an expert. And at that point, your brain and mirror neuron system will code mimic this. After that, view a novice, a flawed demonstration, and your cerebellum will kick in and say, don't do that next time, correct this. Recently, the literature has surfaced terms like active participant and passive observer. And this terminology drives me absolutely crazy. Simulation is supported largely by active and experiential learning frameworks. So when I hear the term passive observer paired with an active learning environment, it stops me in my tracks. Does the observer get anything out of the scenario? Are they actively learning? Then, when you add this idea of debriefing is where it's at, you begin to wonder, are they even paying attention during the debriefing? Is all of their learning dependent on the debriefing? So is it just passive learning during the scenario and active in the debrief? Well, I would like to tell you about a finding that I discovered during a recent study because it's a game changer. I collected data in a multi-site experimental repeated measure study from participants and observers immediately after the scenario, again after the debriefing, and finally 4 weeks later. I also collected data of how they applied what they learned into a parallel case, and at no point was there a significant difference between roles. 5 data points, and there was no difference. Well, considering the literature to date, you might have expected that. And while that is really important, that's not the innovation of my work. The big significance is an innovative way of thinking that could give researchers in simulation a new framework to test brain-based ways of observational learning. It's where the literature in gaming, neuroscience, mass communication, Olympic training, and coaching inform how Kolb and his experiential learning theory meets observational learning theory from Bandura. But that's all I have time for today. Stay tuned, because what I discovered would be the rest of the Hayden Vanguard Lectureship, and it will be a game changer for simulation education in nursing. I'm Kyle Johnson. Thank you so much for your time and consideration.